Hi there, and welcome to the Play Therapy Circle. Before we begin, please note this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It does not provide therapeutic advice, and listening does not create a client-therapist relationship. All views expressed are my own, and any case examples shared have been de-identified to protect privacy. If you're seeking personal support, please reach out to a qualified mental health professional in your area. Hi, and welcome to an episode of the Play Therapy Circle. I'm Kylie Ellison, a therapist, clinical supervisor, and play therapy trainer, and I'm so grateful you're here. This podcast is a space for thoughtful, soulful conversations about child-centered therapy, play-based work, and what it means to show up with presence and compassion, both for our clients and for ourselves. Whether you're a seasoned play therapist, a student just starting out, or someone deeply passionate about working with children, you belong here. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Play Therapy Circle podcast. I'm your host, Kylie Ellison, and I am so glad you are here. Welcome to Hawaii, you guys. I am on my balcony of my hotel. We have had a morning, we've been busy doing some sightseeing, and we're just having a rest before we go down to the pool. So I thought it would be the perfect time to connect with you guys and record a podcast. So I know that when I usually start my episodes, I am checking in with all of you to how are you doing? So that's important. How are you doing? But also, I'm having a great time. Oh my God. So you guys would remember in a recent podcast where I did on self-care, I was talking about how tired I am. So I am definitely catching up on sleep here, getting some vitamin D sunshine, and it is definitely what I needed. So I just love being here. We actually, my husband and I got married here. So Hawaii holds a very special place in our hearts and is somewhere that we love to come to connect. So I'm just loving it. So it's Wednesday here in Hawaii. So we've got 2 more full days, and then we fly home on Saturday. So I'll be back into it next week. And our practice will be closing over Christmas. So it really does feel like moving towards the end of the year now, which is really nice. So this has been definitely what I needed. So you guys will remember from that episode, I said next year, going to have some more holidays because you need it to recharge. So I hope wherever this is reaching you in your part of the world, I hope that you are having a great week and that you are getting some time for recharge as well. I now want to flag that we are in 31 countries now. So if you are a listener from 31 of our countries that follow and listen to the podcast, welcome to the circle. We are so glad to have you. And this episode, I guess, on reflection of being able to stop and slow down over the last couple of days, I was thinking about what topic I would do while I'm away. And I think that the one that stands out for me right now, because I have a whole list of topics, you guys, for next year, we will record right through until the end of the year because everyone is loving our episodes so much. We want to make sure we're getting those episodes out to you on all things CCPT. So in conversations before I left Australia last week about, I guess, the struggles as a CCPT practitioner, and one of the consistent themes was really around this idea of imposter syndrome. So I thought that today, with me having the chance to slow down, take a breath, that I feel I can contribute to this conversation. And like I always say, guys, we are here to start this conversation and start those reflections, but definitely want to acknowledge this is a very big topic that I'm certainly not going to be able to fully cover in all of the time that I have, but it's been really nice to kind of slow down and celebrate and acknowledge CCPT and what it means to be a CCPT practitioner for me. So I really wanted to offer that connection to those of you out there right now who are doubting yourselves, who are feeling like you're not sure if you're doing a good job, especially towards the end of the year as well. When we come into kind of Christmas, it's very easy to start to fatigue as a CCPT practitioner, and that's why we definitely did that episode recently on imposter syndrome. So that's really important. on self-care and burnout. And so this episode really kind of connects with that too. So I just want to acknowledge before I go any further, I'm not sure how our editing is going to go with this, but I can hear all of the kids playing downstairs. So I'm on level 21 of this building, and down directly below me is the beach and the pool. And of course, wherever you go in the world, kids are playing. And I love that. I just love that. So it's beautiful to my ears to hear kids laughing and splashing and playing. But if it is annoying to you, hopefully we'll be able to fix the audio a little bit. So if it's not, I apologize. It's just so cool to hear everyone having such a good time downstairs. So I think I want to dive in, I guess, to get started and to talk about what it means to be a CCPT practitioner and when imposter syndrome starts to creep in. And it can be at any stage of your journey as well. So I just want to acknowledge, validate, and let everyone know who is feeling that, whether you are 6 months into your journey or you're 12 years into your journey. I see you. Imposter syndrome comes and sometimes sneaks up on us more experienced play therapists, where we feel like we've got a handle on things and then suddenly we feel like we don't. Or in the beginning, you will really doubt the process, doubt yourself, doubt whether it's working. And we often say in times of stress, we revert back to what we know. So sometimes we may feel like we need to go into other modalities or potentially introduce other approaches because we're not sure if it's working or not. And this podcast is really to help ground you back into CCPT practice. I really want to offer that to anyone who is feeling that sense of doubt or feeling like they are experiencing that imposter syndrome, because it is real and it happens throughout your journey. And it's a really great reminder, I often say, of being able to stop and reflect on your practice, to re-energize yourself, to reconnect yourself, to reorientate yourself to the modality so that you can continue the incredible work that I know each of you listening are doing right now. So what does imposter syndrome look like for play therapists? So oftentimes you'll feel, or I will hear people reflecting about how maybe they feel like they're faking it as a therapist. So maybe they feel like what they're doing isn't enough, or it's not good enough in terms of standard of practice in relation to the skills of tracking, reflecting feelings, limit setting, and others. They may feel like others are doing a better job than them. They feel like I'm not doing such a great job, but look at Mary down the street and she's doing a really great job. That's a really poor analogy. I don't even know why I said that, but you know what I'm saying. That obviously other people within the profession, maybe it's perceived that they're doing better. A fear of making mistakes. I think that is definitely in the beginning, as a beginning play therapist, where therapists often struggle, is in worrying that if they reflect feelings in a certain way, that maybe it will rupture the relationship. And so the therapist is worried about making any of those reflections so they don't, which is, I feel like, definitely not necessarily going into deeply our play therapy practice, and is certainly staying safe. And certainly for those who I connect with, I'm encouraging them at the absolute minimum to be making sure that you are connecting with the feelings of a child in the playroom and having a go at that more so than any other skill, because it's really about that validation and empathetic understanding and listening. So that really is, though, a challenging skill for beginning play therapists, and being worried that maybe what they will do in terms of that skill they've learned in training may not hit the mark. So questioning, I think too, if they feel like as a beginning play therapist that you're not doing enough. I think that's something that actually comes up a lot in beginning reflections, feeling like by doing tracking and reflecting feelings, I'm not doing anything. I feel like it's not really progressing the child. It's not targeting, I guess, those outcomes or goals that the parents or stakeholders expect. And I feel like I'm wasting everyone's time. That can be part of those beginning anxiety and reflections and worries for play therapists. Reading every child's behaviour as a reflection of your competency, I think that's a really good one to acknowledge, around the fact that often beginning play therapists worry that they aren't doing enough, or if they're having a child in the playroom that's overly aggressive, that clearly their limits aren't working, or something that they're doing isn't working in the playroom, and that's why the child's escalating. So really taking some of those responses personally, rather than sitting in that space of being that observer as a therapist. What I guess contributes to this a little bit, definitely one of the things that I'm seeing in current practice, so this is in November of 2025, so I like to caveat all of that and caveat that I'm in Brisbane, in the Bayside area of Brisbane in Queensland, so I can only talk to my community. But certainly I think one of the things that I've talked in a few podcasts about now is the fact that we are working with a population and a community right now that is stressed and anxious more than ever. It's not getting better, guys. I think on many levels it's escalating. So we connect and meet with parents in crisis. So understandably, they're looking for some sort of intervention that's going to help them to see results quickly. And so we can really take on board that pressure from parents because they are struggling themselves. So when we portion it out, that begins to help us to cope with the stress that we're feeling. If we can recognize what we're picking up on is most likely some of that projection from the parent. So that's a beginning part of how to manage that. So we'll talk about that soon. But definitely our communities are struggling. And so that makes it difficult for us to not feel like we're doubting ourselves if we're not making those outcomes. I think that when we do connect and do our training and our clinical program work, we can often feel like the training is very much focused on making sure that we have that technique down pat, that we know exactly what we're doing in terms of tracking, reflecting feelings, limit setting, and making meaning. And if we don't feel like we're doing that good enough in the playroom, we can begin to doubt ourselves as well. I think in the profession, and I can, again, only talk to Queensland in terms of statutory bodies and government bodies and how they fund therapy services, it's often very much outcomes-based and evaluation-based. So that can also feel like we have that pressure on ourselves. We put that pressure on ourselves to make sure that we can get those outcomes, whether that's through a scale or a questionnaire, or other reports and things that we are needing to provide to evidence what we're doing. So when we do that, we feel that pressure of being able to show what is happening in the playroom. And I definitely think that is something 10, 11 years down the line now that I feel far more comfortable with doing in terms of explaining that to stakeholders and being able to stay within our framework without feeling like I need to have a whole bunch of data. Data definitely helps, but it's not the only thing. And so, again, that's with experience. It's with going to meetings where that question occurs and being able to build your skill set in the language that you can use to say back to stakeholders within the CCPT approach and principles. So very important. I think probably the other place, I guess, where imposter syndrome can be triggered is, I guess, anywhere where we can see information online. So whether that's on social media, whether that's on YouTube, whether that's on a website, whatever that looks like, where we might be comparing ourselves to others in the field and worrying that maybe we are not as progressed or not as skilled as we had hoped. So I think definitely in the beginning, when I began my practice back in 2016 and 2015, more like 2015, it definitely was... It was something where I really had to be brave. I had to step outside of some of those anxieties to really deeply connect with my belief in the approach. That really helped me in those beginning days because you don't have, like I often say, sort of a catalogue in the back of your mind of experiences with clients where you've successfully kind of moved them to mastery that you can lean into. I've got a lot of those. I hold a lot of those memories and teachers along the way that have helped me to build my confidence. But in the beginning, you don't have that. So I think sometimes we can feel like we doubt ourselves, and it's definitely very important to lean into the principles of what you have learnt in your training as a way of being able to navigate building that experience portfolio, because once you do, I truly believe it does make it definitely a lot easier. But I just want to normalize for anyone right now who is in their beginning couple of years of practice, who is really doubting themselves sometimes. That's really, really normal. It's really, really normal. And what I will often say when I have supervisees come to supervision to talk about this is that from my perspective, what I'm hearing from that supervisee is that they deeply care about this work, that they are asking for more help with being able to do their skills or more resources so that they can empower themselves to be the best practitioners that they can be. So I really think that is an indicator that it means a lot when we do start to feel that imposter syndrome, because we really want to do a good job. So what makes CCPT sometimes trigger that self-doubt? What is some of those variables that really start to trigger that anxiety and us kind of questioning, are we good enough at our jobs? Are we good enough CCPT practitioners? I think the biggest thing that stands out for me, and I've put it in the title as well, around trusting the process. I think I've joked in other podcasts that I literally want to put this on a t-shirt. I'm not even kidding. I feel like this is something I say a lot, so often to my supervisees. And you know when you've done it, so in the playroom, when you do limit setting and you have a child that you've been working with for quite a while, one of the firsts, one of those shifts and changes that we see is when kids can actually start to tell you the limit. And that's when we know that we have helped to support that child to regulate their emotions, be able to redirect themselves appropriately when they're like, I know, I can't bounce the ball on the wall. And that's great when we get to that point. I feel like I get that with supervisees as well, where I'm like, guys, like, it's okay, trust the process. And like, I know you're going to say trust the process. And it gets really like irritating to some of my supervisees because they're like, we know that you were going to say that. But truly, that is CCPT at its core, is trusting the process. So I definitely want to put that on a t-shirt for sure and send that to my supervisees. I'm sure they'd love that. But really, all jokes aside, it's about the fact that CCPT is non-directive. CCPT is non-directive, but it's also relationship-based. And this is the difference. We really, truly need to connect and form that therapeutic alliance, which we've talked about in an earlier, like, beginning podcast episode. So go back and have a listen to that one if you like, on facilitating that relationship, because I just know how important that is. But really, truly, I think at its core, what has really been a strong theme for me this year throughout my practice, and so working with clients and working with supervisees and in the training space, is that everything else aside, we need to be able to connect with the child. And this is where Virginia Axeline's core tenets of CCPT come in, and especially those qualities, not only just the qualities of a therapist, but really what it is and what it means to be a CCPT practitioner. It's about truly, through our reflections, communicating that empathy, congruence, and unconditional positive regard. I also want to put that on a t-shirt. I'm not even kidding. I think that sometimes we, in the trenches of working with children, especially when they are really struggling and having a difficult time, I think that it can be really challenging for us to hold that in mind. I think we forget it sometimes, and not intentionally, but I think we can become anxious. We can become worried about how quickly progress is happening. We can be worried about expectations from stakeholders. We can feel like when we have to meet with the parent, we're not going to have a lot of updates to give them. But I always lean back into change theory with this as evidence of CCPT, that we have to have that relationship in order to help facilitate that change. And that establishment of that relationship is complex, because depending on what has happened for the child before they walk into your playroom for the first time is going to determine how quickly that relationship begins, and also how you're doing and how you're feeling and how you connect. There are kids that I have had in the playroom that I have met with them and gone, oh my God, I don't think I can connect with this kid. And that is imposter syndrome as well, right? Because that comes up as soon as we feel like, oh, this isn't a typical child. There is no typical child also. So I'm talking myself out of every conversation I'm having today, you guys, really, truly. But I think that the children that I've found the most challenging in terms of building that relationship. So if you have children like that right now in your playrooms where you're like, I find it hard to connect. I find it hard to really sort of find that common ground or that just connection point with a child. Keep going. Trust the process. Put it on a t-shirt. Trust the process, because over 11 years, it has been those kids that I've learnt the most about my practice from. So they are actually incredible angels to me in terms of, and I don't mean that in a religious sense. I just mean that in the sense of, they have come at a point in my career where I needed to expand my skills, and they gifted me that. So it's a really different way of framing it, guys, to look at it not as this is a challenge, this is something about my practice, I'm clearly failing, I'm not good enough, I have an absence of a particular skill that I need. No. This is strengths-based, but it is also CCPT, because we deeply believe in the child's capacity for growth. And guess what? We get to have that too. So we get to have that sense of belief in our capacity for growth, because where you are in your journey, you're not going to be in 2 years' time. You're going to be so far ahead. So looking at it as an opportunity to learn a new skill, expand your experience and your skill set is an incredible opportunity. So moving away in your mindset from I feel like I'm not doing enough, or I feel like I have a deficit in my skill, to this is going to teach me something that's going to make me an even better play therapist. That's what I invite you guys to consider in your practice. But it very much is non-directive in that relationship space, and the child really knows how much time they need to build that relationship before they shift and change in their work. So again, when I say that, what am I really saying? We're really leaning into very much Virginia Axeline's 8 tenets there when we say that the child will lead the agenda. The child leads the agenda because the child knows what they need to talk about and in what time frame that looks like. So really then we become that advocate for kids when we're talking to stakeholders to say, this child needs, maybe a few more sessions to be able to build that relationship, or they were able to really connect with me from the beginning. They were ready to tell their story. It really just depends on the individual child. So they're going to take some time, and we genuinely don't know what that number of sessions looks like to build that relationship. So you're not always going to see that immediate, tangible change when it's at their pace. And that's something that you can explain to parents and caregivers in that initial consultation. If you want, I always say this, if you want long-term sustainable change, I'm not going to be able to do that in 5 sessions. I'm not going to be able to do that in 10 sessions. The child needs some time. Let's work at their pace for long-term sustainable change. Hey everyone, that is the first part of our podcast. There was so much to talk about that we needed to make it a 2-parter. So you're going to have to catch up next week's episode for part 2. This is a big aloha from Hawaii. I hope wherever this reaches you, you are well. And we'll catch you guys again next week. Bye! Thank you so much for being here for another episode of the Play Therapy Circle. If anything resonated with you today, I'd love it if you could follow the podcast, share it with a colleague, or leave a short review. It really helps others find our circle. And if you have a topic or question you'd love me to explore, I'd love to hear from you. This space is for you, and I want it to feel like a conversation. Until next time, take care of yourself, and remember, you belong here.